back to Cravings Food Adventures. When it comes to labels, do you know the difference between a monosodium glutamate and a carbohydrate? I certainly don't. Do you actually look at your labels before you consume the product? I know I do sometimes, but I don't completely understand what everything means. But you're in luck because I have my friend Kim here. Kim is a lifestyle coach. She makes it her mandate to help everybody with their weight loss and getting healthy again. I'll just give you a very short story about Kim. So I've known Kim for years, like literally, I think my son was in her Scouts program many years ago. And it just happened that I had some uniforms that she was asking for, and I had, it was in my basement somewhere. And many years later, I found those uniforms. And at that point, I think I was at the lowest point in my life, weight-wise, mentally. My mother had just passed away, and I was just feeling horrible about myself. But I didn't know how to get out of that. And as it so happened, I think it was pure luck, really, that I found those uniforms, and I tracked Kim down. And she called me and she said, "You know what? I live down the road from you. I'll pop in and pick them up." And I opened the door and I thought, who the hell is this angel? I mean, literally, she was wearing a white dress. I still remember today. And her hair was flowing back in the wind. And she was all slim and sexy. She had lost 200 plus pounds. And I thought, oh my God, what the hell are you doing? Anyway, so we just started talking. And Kim said, she's always been a very positive person. I've always known her to always have a smile on her face, no matter what. But, she told me about the wellness. She was taking Herbalife. In addition to that, she was working out and, she had adopted a healthy lifestyle. And I thought if I was going to put I was going to put myself in anybody's hands, it was going to be Kim. And I did. I worked out for the very first time with Kim. I did sit-ups and I thought, are you kidding me? 50 sit-ups? But I did them. And with Kim, I've been with her I don't know, Kim, how long has it been? 3 years, 4 years?
Yeah, I think 4 years actually, yeah.
So I lost a ton of weight. I also put on weight. That's life. You go back and forth like a yo-yo. But the important thing is not just about weight. The important thing is that I now know what's good for me, what's not good for me. I work out with Kim and I generally feel stronger and happier. So thank you, Kim, not just for me, but I know there's a lot of people in our group that really feel that way very, very strongly. So thank you. And Kim is going to explain what the heck these labels mean. Over to you, Kim.
Thanks, Karen. You're too generous. You're too kind. Yes, weight loss is an up and down battle. It is a battle every day. I too am going through my battles, but it's about having the tools you need in order to try and get back on track. So sometimes we feel helpless, we feel lost. And so if you have some tools that are going to help you along your journey, those tools you need to hang on to. And one of those tools I know for me has been being able to read labels. So now it's sort of a crazy time for all of us. So not having a lot of time in the grocery store to read those labels, but knowing before you go in the kind of things that you're going to buy and then staying on track. So as soon as you know what's healthy for you, filling your house with those items so that down the road when you find yourself wavering, I guess, a little bit, you still have those tools in your house. You still have the tools, the knowledge in order to read those labels. So let's get into label reading. So I brought a few items out that we can kind of share, Karen, so that people can kind of have an idea. One or two of them are not so good and one or two of them are not bad. So really important is you see all of this information on a label. There's a label on the back of a package and it says nutrition facts, and virtually all of them are exactly the same. There's standards for those labels. So don't think, oh, I don't know how to read. I know how to read this one, but I don't know how to read the next one. But in Canada, most of the food that we have are labeled exactly the same. The nutrition facts are the same. They come in order. So the very first item you're going to see on a label is the serving size. Okay, so that is really important. People always ask me, why does that really matter? Because quite often, we have this little tiny can of mushroom soup. Quite often, we read this label and think, oh, it's 120 calories. Can't be that bad. The problem is we look at that serving size and we find out it's for half of this can. So this can is no longer 120 calories, this can is now 240 calories without adding anything else to it, exactly as it is. So we have to be really careful with serving size. So always pay attention to that. Make sure that you're aware of what a serving size is. For instance, I have a box of Cheerio cereal. What a serving size is this tiny little 3/4 cup. Okay, so when we look at that label and we see this box of cereal having 110 calories without milk or 150 calories with skim milk, we're talking about this much of that cereal. And I'm sure none of us eat this much. I'm sure most of us eat a little bigger bowl. Okay, so just pay attention to serving size. That's the very first thing you'll always see on your label. The next thing that you'll see is how many calories in that serving size. So everything on that nutrition label is according to the serving size. So keep that in mind. If it's 2 servings, that means it's twice everything on the label. If it's 10 servings, it's 10 times the amount on the label. So be careful what you're eating, okay? So serving size, definitely important. Number of calories in that serving, definitely important, all right? Then the next 3 things that we look at are, where are the calories coming from? So calories are sort of the fuel for our engine of our car. It's the amount of gas that we're putting into our car. And those calories come from 3 sources. The very first source is your carbohydrates. Your second source is your first size is your fats. Your second is your carbohydrates, and your third is your proteins. So really important to watch those. And I call those the 9-4-4 rule, because for every serving of fat, it's 9 times that amount of calories. And I'll explain that in a few minutes. And sugars or carbs are 4, which are your sugars and your fibers, and your proteins are 4 times that amount. So all of your calories are made up based on those particular 3 items. So why is that important? All right, so when we look at things like our carbohydrates, and I'm going to hold this up. This is just sort of an idea of roughly numbers. So with carbohydrates, the number of carbohydrates somebody needs in a day is, as a woman, is approximately total calories, you want about 1,200. Men, you want about 1,500 for weight loss. To maintain weight, we're looking at about 2,000 calories. So your carbohydrates make up about 50 to 60% of the intake of calories in the day, all right? So when we look at those carbohydrates on the list, we want to keep within about 600 to 650, as a man a little bit more, but around that area of carbohydrates. So based on that, the carbohydrates on your label become important. We're looking at grams, but they convert to calories. All of those 3 convert to calories. So let's look at the label now. All right, so when we're looking at a label, the first thing that you're going to see is the fats. Now, why are fats an issue? Okay, so there are 3 different kinds of fats. You've got your saturated, your monos, and your polys. You want mono and poly fats. You got to watch that label, because the label is going to tell you on here how much of that fat that's in the container is actually coming from a saturated or a trans fat. And the reason why is because we don't want a lot of those in our day. As little saturated and trans fats, if none, would be great, but if not, as little as we possibly can. And as far as fats go, we're only going to be putting maybe 25 to 30 grams of fat in our body for the entire day. So if your package says on your serving, for instance, let's look at that soup again. I'm picking on the poor soup. So saturated and trans fats in this particular can says there's 1.5 grams. But remember, it's half the can. I'm sure none of us eat half the can. So you're looking at 3 grams, which is 10% of your daily intake. That's not counting a little butter that you're putting on your bread, or, if you're having a steak, how much fat's coming in that steak. So you have to be really careful watching how much fats and making sure your fats aren't coming from a saturated or a trans fat. The good thing is on this label, it says there's no saturated or trans fats in here. So the fat that's in here is at least a little better. All right, so we want to pay attention to your fats. The next thing that you want to pay attention to is the amount of carbs that are in your product. So the next label, so you'll see fats, and then you'll come down to carbohydrates. So just, I'm hoping you guys can see the label, but in there it says your carbohydrates. So carbohydrates come from virtually 2 sources: fiber and sugars. So why is that important? Remember, any excess sugar that goes into your body converts to fat. So the key is that we want those carbohydrates come from either a simple source, which is sugar or sugar product, or they come from a complex source, which means that the sugars or the carbs that are in that particular product, like an orange or an apple, which are complex carbs, your body takes longer to break those down. And quite often it's the amount of fiber that's in there. So fiber slows down the breakdown of the sugars in the body, and therefore slows down where that sugar goes. Okay, so we don't want the sugars going to our reserves. We want our body to use the sugars. So when there's more fiber in a product, it means that your body's going to slow down on how it's going to digest or break down the sugars. All right, so what does that mean? So what? Fiber. 5 grams of fiber is a serving of fiber. So we want to always look, we want to target on those carbohydrates how much fiber is in here. So your sugar here on this particular product, so this is actually an organic soybean pasta. It's an alternative to regular pasta, and I love this because to me it's still pasta, and it comes like I've got the organic black bean, and I've got a couple other ones. Anyways, this particular one is soy. So on here, the reason why I love these products is because here the sugars are only 6 grams, so not too bad, but the fiber is 13 grams. So what does that mean when I look at that? So I always look at a carb and take the fiber, total fiber grams off of the total sugar grams. And that, if the number is negative, it means it's actually really high in fiber, low in sugar, and your body's going to break it down well. If it's the opposite, be careful, okay? So fiber kind of offsets the sugars just to keep it kind of simple. So we're always looking for a higher fiber content, lower sugar content, all right? And then the last item on here is your protein, okay? Protein. So why Karen knows lots about proteins. So whenever we're working out, I always tell my my class that you want to always fill your body with protein after workout, because that's what sustains muscle, helps with muscle growth, and helps to sustain muscle. So we're always targeting at least 10 grams of protein, okay? So it depends why you're eating something. Quite often we eat things because we have a sugar craving, and that's fine, I get it. But if you're eating this product for protein, you want to make sure it has protein. So it's got to have at least 10 grams of protein per serving to make it worthwhile eating for protein. So this particular item has 20 grams of protein for a quarter serving of this actual product. So this becomes a protein source. It's huge.
That's
yeah,
a
it's
lot.
great. Yeah. So you're going to eat a quarter of this package, and of course we all know pasta swells up, so it's going to swell up. You're going to get a decent serving. Protein also makes you feel full and holds that full feeling longer. So it actually cuts down on the amount that we crave. It makes you feel like you've actually eaten and sustained something. But pasta itself is mostly carbs. This pasta is mostly protein. So that's the really great thing, is just, I'm still eating pasta, I'm still enjoying my food, I'm still feeling full, but I'm getting something out of it. So I'm eating for a purpose. And that's why label reading is so important. All right, so we always want to target 10 grams of protein, really important, so that you're feeling full, your body's getting some of the nutrition that it needs, a good chunk of the nutrition it needs. But we want to watch things like sugars, because sugars are hidden as different names. So that was one thing that I wanted to make sure that I shared, and I hope you guys can all see this. But sugar comes in many names. So when I read this label and I see how much sugar's in here, I want to know I read the carbs, and I want to know where's all the sugar coming from. When you read the ingredient list, you'll see what's in that ingredient list, and to tell you what's actually in there. And is there sugar, and is it hidden under a different name? Well, here are some of the names that they call sugar. So things like sugar. I know, it's crazy. So you're reading this label going, oh my God, but it doesn't have sugar, it has molasses, or it has corn syrup, or it has this thing called fructose.
And beet sugar sounds so healthy.
Doesn't it? It does. It comes from beets, and there's cane sugar, and that sounds healthy. And honey, sounds healthy. But the problem is, guys, these are all sugars, and all of these sugars convert to sugar in the body, which converts to fat. Okay, so you have to be really careful. We need sugar, but we want to slow down how our body actually uses the sugar. So keep in mind, when you see those labels, they're not all bad. You just have to balance them. So everything in moderation is okay, but you want to make sure you're balancing. All right. So And then also, let's get back to that label. So on here too, so that kind of covers most of it. And then underneath the protein, you'll see things like sodium and cholesterol and calcium and potassium and those are all telling you roughly what else might be in there. So there might be some other nutritional benefits in the product. There might not be. But these also come with a number off to the side. And that number for all of these says it's a percentage of your daily value. So based on our Canada Food Guide, there's a percentage that they recommend of each product. Keep in mind, some of these percentages, like sodium, unfortunately, as we've grown as a society and as we've needed to meet our food standards and meet the demand, the government has allowed the acceptable level of sodium to go up. So although it says a percentage of your daily sodium, they're talking about maybe 1,500 or 2,000, where in fact, if you go back maybe 20 years ago, 1,000 was acceptable. Oh. So percentage, yes, it's a percentage, but keep in mind, some of those percentages have been adapted or changed because of us, because of the demand that we put on the system. So things like sodium, you still want to keep it low. You still need it, but the percentages of daily value are a little tricky. It's also based on 2,000 calories. So if you are trying to lose weight as a woman and you're trying to cut your calorie intake down to 1,200, that's a percentage of 2,000. So you actually want to consume half of whatever they're saying that percentage is. So your maximum percentage is 50%. So now just be careful of the percentage of daily value, okay? So those percentages are a little bit deceiving based on a 2,000 calorie diet. Men, you're looking at 1,500 calories. So you still want to cut those numbers by a quarter if you're looking to lose weight. If you're looking to maintain, those numbers are satisfactory. But if you're looking to lose, just be careful, okay? All right, and then I just want to give you a couple of little items that, so we look at fat and think it's not such a big deal, but on a container like this soup, okay, where the fat in here is 1.5 grams for half the can. So we're going to say the can is 3 grams of fat. All right. So what does 3 grams of fat look like? So I don't know if you guys can see this.
Ew.
This is yummy, isn't it? Karen, wouldn't you love this?
Ew.
This is bacon grease. Okay. So this is fat. This is the worst kind of fat. This is a trans fat. This is a saturated fat that will turn back to solid at room temperature, which is exactly what I've done. This is the worst kind of fat you can actually add into your body. This was 1 pound of bacon baked in the oven, and the grease just dripped off of it. So that's from 1 pound of bacon. Wow. But let me tell you what 5 grams of fat. So we think of 5 grams of fat, and that can of soup is 3. So it's getting close. And if you actually make that can, because it's a concentrated can, you make that can with milk, you're probably close to the 5 grams of fat, okay? 5 grams of fat is 1 teaspoon of this lovely stuff, okay? So be careful whenever you're looking at those kind of things, because we don't realize how much fat actually is in stuff, okay? So we have to be really careful. And also too, with sugar, it's 4 grams. So every 4 grams of sugar on your label, you're going to end up with 1 teaspoon of sugar going into your body, okay? So those numbers are really important because we don't necessarily see them and we read them, but we're not really sure of exactly what they are.
Scary.
Okay? So yeah, isn't it frightening? It's really scary. So people ask me about cereal. Is cereal healthy for you? Read the label. If it doesn't contain fiber, I'm not sure what you're eating it for. If it tastes good, that's great, but most of it's just sugar. If you're having things like soup, be careful. And also too, just to give you guys an idea, this actually has 20 milligrams of salt. So it's actually really low in salt, believe it or not, but still 20 milligrams of salt in this tiny, half of this tiny little can. So those numbers are really relevant to exactly what you're putting into your body, okay? So we have to be really careful. Low fat sometimes means more sugar. Those things are really, you really have to read the whole label. You can't just look and say, oh, the calories are low, it's fine. Right. You got to look at all of it and know why you're eating it. So just to kind of give you guys an idea. So if you're looking for weight loss, 1,200 calories for women, 1,500 for men. Your fat, you're going to want anywhere between 250 to 300 calories of fat. which interprets to about 25 to 30 grams of fat based on just simple math, okay? And you guys can see that, all right? As far as carbs go, so your carbs, if you're somewhere between 600 and 650 grams of carbs in a day, and again, that's just because of math, so it works out kind of to four times whatever grams are them. They'll work out to your calories being between 600 and 650 calories coming from your carbs. And then your proteins, again, about 300 calories of protein, and that's coming from, you know, women having 775 grams of protein in a day and men having 100 grams of protein in a day. So that's kind of where those numbers come from. So they're just, and it's a little complicated, but just to help you whenever you're reading the labels, all right?
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Kim. Before we sign off, can I quickly ask, because I know that many of my viewers, subscribers, it's all fine when you have a label you can look at, but what happens, and I know that I've been through this as well, you know, as you're going through the weight loss process or you're trying to eat healthier, how do you know how to calculate calories that are actually on your plate? So, you know, I'm going to eat an egg and I'm going to eat a cup of something, and I'm not really sure kind of what that is. Like, what's your advice kind of finding that information? Like, can I go to the internet to find that stuff, or how do I calculate it?
Yeah, so all food that we consume has a related nutrition value as well as a related calorie count. There are some really great programs out there, and I probably could send you some links, Karen, that you could add to your page for your viewers. But if you Google, and the Canada Food Guide actually does have a sort of an overview of kind of a lot of food items and what has a certain amount of calories. So those things are a way of you following and finding out roughly what the calorie count is and what the nutritional value is. I mean, even eggs, when you buy eggs on the carton, it actually has the nutrition value on there.
About
so
50 calories, I think, right? 50, 100
50
calories.
Yeah, 50 to 70, depending on the size. So if you're dealing with a small or an extra, I mean, eggs come in lots of sizes.
Lots of sizes, yeah.
Yeah.
Like us.
Like us. And all of them are great. Like us. So yeah, so there's lots of sources that you can use. The Canada Food Guide, I suggest always, because it is backed up by our government. It's proven. The Canada Food Guide recently, actually, Karen, which is really crazy, we were talking about proteins and where proteins come from, and they, you know, how they have the plate and serving sizes and what have you. And they were talking about protein, and they said you have to have, you know, meat. Now they're saying no, plant proteins are much healthier for you. Yeah. So, you know, so even it takes them a while to update, but they certainly are updating those things. But they are a pretty reliable source, and it is actually where all of our labels are generated from. So it's kind of the standard.
Yep.
So I do use that a lot. Yeah,
awesome.
For sure.
That's that. You know what? I was going to another site to get that information, but I didn't think to look at the Canada Food Guide. So that's very helpful. Thank you. And Kim, thank you so much for sharing. It was really, really insightful. I'm sure many of these people are going to write in and thank you personally, because it's really opening up people's eyes to like what they're actually putting in their bodies. So thank you for giving us your time on this wonderful Sunday.
Thank you, Karen, and thank you for putting this information out for everybody, and thank you for everything that you do, because you are incredible, and I am so honored and thankful to be part of what you do.
And we would love to have you back, because I know you have a lot more going on in that brain of yours.
Crazy, and I love to talk, so it's perfect.
That I know. Thank you, Kim. Bye.
Okay, thank you to all your viewers, guys. Keep supporting Karen. She's wonderful. She's got great things coming down the tube for us all. And again, Karen, thank you, and all the best to you and your family.
Thank you.
All right.